Did you know that without one Japanese engineer's idea during a lunch break game of board games, your phone's navigation, your restaurant menu QR code, and your boarding pass would not exist? That engineer worked at a Toyota parts factory, solved a problem nobody was paying attention to, and then gave the entire invention to the world for free. And he is just one of the 5 Japanese men on today's list who quietly built the features inside every car you have ever driven. Most people will never know their names, but after this video, you will definitely appreciate Japan's contribution in the automotive space. 1. Soichiro Honda and the CVCC engine. In 1972, America's biggest car makers were sitting in government meetings, begging lawmakers to lower emissions standards because they said meeting them was physically impossible. But Honda, a motorcycle company that had only been making cars for about a decade, stood up and said the job was already done. The United States Clean Air Act had set 1975 emission targets so tough that Ford, GM, and Chrysler called them unrealistic. GM's vice president even publicly dismissed Honda's solution, saying it might work in a toy engine but never in anything real. So, Soichiro Honda bought a 1973 Chevrolet Impala with a 5.7-liter V8, shipped it to Japan, fitted it with his CVCC system, and flew it back to the EPA in Michigan for testing. The result? Hydrocarbons dropped by 78%, carbon monoxide by 95%, and the engine still produced 160 horsepower without a single catalytic converter. What makes this story even better is how the CVCC came to exist in the first place. Honda announced it publicly in February 1971, before his own engineers had finished building it. They were horrified. His reasoning was brutally simple. If he asked them when it would be ready, they'd never say. So, he told the world it was coming and gave them no choice but to deliver. The name Compound Vortex Controlled Combustion was deliberately vague to stop competitors from reverse engineering it while the patent was still being filed. The CVCC directly laid the groundwork for VTEC, Honda's later system that gives an engine 2 entirely different power personalities in a single rev range. That technology still powers cars today. Speaking of engineers who refuse to let a good idea die, this next one spent years fixing an engine that every other company on the planet had already given up on. 2. Kenichi Yamamoto and the rotary engine. The Wankel rotary engine had one of the most embarrassing track records in automotive history, but in 1961, a small Japanese company called Mazda decided to make it their entire identity. General Motors and Mercedes-Benz tried it and threw their hands up shortly. Citroën poured money into it and nearly went bankrupt before quitting. But Kenichi Yamamoto saw a gem in this engine. He assembled a team that colleagues later nicknamed the 47 Ronin, a reference to Japanese samurai who fought a battle everyone said was unwinnable. The problem with the rotary was brutal. The triangular rotor's tips were scratching deep grooves into the engine housing. Engineers called them devil's claw marks. The apex seals were failing within hours. So, Yamamoto's team spent years developing aluminum carbon composite seals that actually survived, then reworked the lubrication system to stop the engine from burning oil like a campfire. But the 1973 oil crisis nearly ended everything. The rotary was thirsty by nature, and fuel prices had quadrupled overnight. Mazda's sales collapsed. The Japanese government was already pressuring smaller automakers to merge or disappear. Yamamoto was then called back in to either save the engine or accept that it was over. He chose to save it. The result was the 1978 RX-7. It weighed just 1,098 kilograms, cost under $7,000, and was so well balanced that over 800,000 were sold across 3 generations. The rotary engine soon found its way into the MX-5 Miata after an American advisor kept pushing for a cheap roadster. While Yamamoto was making the underdog engine work, another Japanese engineer was quietly preparing to walk into the luxury car market and embarrass the Germans in their own backyard. 3. Ichiro Suzuki and the Lexus LS 400. When the Lexus LS 400 debuted at the 1989 Detroit Auto Show, Mercedes and BMW engineers bought one, took it back to their labs, and tore it apart. They needed to understand how Toyota built something that good for $35,000, roughly half the price of the equivalent S-Class. BMW reportedly accused Lexus of selling it below cost just to force them out of business. The Mercedes engineer overseeing their competing S-Class development lost his job trying to keep up. The man responsible for all that panic was Ichiro Suzuki. In 1983, Toyota chairman Eiji Toyota asked one question: "Can we build a car better than the best car in the world?" Suzuki said yes, then set targets his own engineering director called insane. The car had to hit 250 kilometers per hour, achieve a drag coefficient under 0.29, and maintain an interior noise level no louder than 58 decibels while cruising at 100 kilometers per hour. That was quieter than any German rival at the time. The project, codenamed Circle F, eventually involved over 4,000 people across 24 engineering teams. To demonstrate the engine's smoothness, Toyota filmed a commercial where a pyramid of champagne glasses was built on top of the running V8 as the car accelerated to 240 kilometers per hour. Nothing moved, not even a single glass. The LS400 outsold both the S-Class and the BMW 7 Series in the United States within its first year. Lexus is still selling luxury cars today, and in 2025 announced the final LS Heritage Edition as the model's retirement tribute. But while Suzuki was perfecting the luxury car segment, one man was rethinking the entire idea of how a car factory should work, and his answer changed every industry on Earth. 4. Taiichi Ohno and the Toyota production system. When Taiichi Ohno visited the United States after World War II to study American manufacturing, he came back with an unexpected obsession: supermarkets. Not factories, not assembly lines, supermarkets. Specifically the way shelves were only restocked when they ran low, rather than being loaded up in massive batches, just in case. That single observation became the foundation of a management system, now used in hospitals, airlines, and Amazon warehouses worldwide. Toyota in the late 1940s was in serious trouble. Their production output per worker was 1/9 of Ford's. They had no money to stockpile parts, no room for waste, and no margin for error. Ohno turned that problem into a philosophy: make only what is needed, exactly when it is needed, in the precise quantity required. He called it just in time. He also built in a concept called jidoka, where machines were designed to detect their own defects and stop production automatically rather than churn out thousands of faulty parts. The entire manufacturing world was built around producing as much as possible and storing the rest. Ohno called that fear, disguised as productivity. And when the 1973 oil crisis hit and auto companies worldwide bled out, Toyota barely flinched because they carried almost no excess inventory. Next up, we have another engineer that took things way too personal. He didn't build engines or factories. He shaped how cars actually feel to drive, and he did it by nearly dying for the job. 5. Hiromu Naruse and the soul of Toyota's sports cars. Hiromu Naruse joined Toyota in 1963 as a temporary mechanic. He left 47 years later as the man who logged more laps at the Nürburgring than any other Japanese driver in history, personally mentored Toyota's future president, and gave the world the Lexus LFA. Ferrari engineers called him the man who knows all the world's roads. His influence stretched across decades of Toyota performance cars: the AE86, the MR2, the Celica, and the A80 Supra. He was the one who convinced Toyota to ship Supra prototypes to the Nürburgring for development in the 1980s, when executives thought it was unnecessary. He assembled a test team that operated under a specific rule: one full Nürburgring lap for every single rated horsepower of any new model. For the Supra, that meant over 300 laps at roughly 10 minutes each. The LFA was his final project and his greatest obsession. He co-authored a 500-point document describing exactly what a Japanese supercar should feel like. He was given authority over the project above the chief engineer, the first time in Toyota's history that had ever happened. During high-speed durability testing at Nardo in Italy, running at over 320 kilometers per hour in complete darkness, with no track lighting and birds flying at the windshield, he pulled into the pits and asked if the dampers could be improved. In 2011, the LFA Nürburgring package set a production car lap record of 7 minutes and 14 seconds at the same circuit. The GR Supra, GR86, and all of Toyota Gazoo Racing carry his DNA directly. And now, for the wildest story in the entire video. This last engineer built a car so dominant that racing organizers had to ban it just to keep competition alive. 6. Hiroyoshi Kato and the Nissan Skyline GTR. The first time Hiroyoshi Kato ever drove the Nürburgring, he was behind the wheel of a disguised GTR prototype, still under development, on a circuit with 73 corners and nearly 300 meters of elevation change. He beat Porsche's production car lap record by 25 seconds. He wasn't chasing a record though, he was just testing the suspension setup. But right after that, Nissan built the R32 Skyline GTR for one reason: to take back the Japanese touring car championship from Ford's Sierra RS 500 Cosworth, which had dominated in 1987 and 1988. It was, by the engineer's own admission, a matter of national pride. The Atisa ETS all-wheel drive system at the heart of the GTR was the result of engineers tearing apart a Porsche 959 and deciding that Porsche had actually gotten the torque distribution wrong. Nissan's version used an electro-hydraulic multi-plate clutch that could shift power between front and rear wheels faster and more precisely than anything available at the time. The results were almost embarrassing. The GTR won all 29 races it entered in the JTCC between 1989 and 1993. It then won 50 out of 50 starts in the N1 Super Taikyu Endurance Series from 1991 to 1997. When it arrived in Australia, it won Bathurst in 1991 and 1992, and the Australian press gave it a nickname that stuck forever: Godzilla. The car was so good that drivers who wanted to drift, it discovered the only way to break the rear tires loose was to physically pull the Atesa fuse out of the fuse box. In January 2025, at the Tokyo Auto Salon, Nissan unveiled an electric R32 GTR prototype, built entirely in engineers' spare time. Kato was called in to evaluate it and confirm it still felt like a GTR. So, which of these 6 engineers surprised you the most? Drop your answer in the comments below. We read every single one. If this video blew your mind even a little, hit that thumbs up and subscribe for more stories like this. There are more legends where these came from. See you in the next one.